this is a conference, this is an organisation about children at play and how you work with children through play. My experience is that people of all ages will play if you let them, and if you find an excuse for them to play, even adolescents. I've had 4 adolescents of my own, and their dignity is immense. But if you give them a little child to play with, then they will play too. And so it is in therapy. If you have an adolescent or a young adult or someone who's old and they're struggling with some sort of trauma in their life, you can always use play of some sort to help them tell their story. And that's what they need to do. This day, this little old lady was coming to see me. And I knew from the GP that her husband had died, and that's why she was suicidal, he said. And I sat there. In those days, I wore jeans and tartan shirt, and I didn't just have hair, I had long hair, you know, and a Viva Zapata moustache, I think, with now Mary. Seems to have moved to the edge of the yeah. And I looked pretty scruffy, really. But there I was, sitting at my desk in the attic, waiting for this little old lady on a Wednesday afternoon. And I could hear her panting her way up the stairs, stopping on every landing. And eventually, she peered over the top of the last set of stairs, and she saw me. And she had, even though it was quite warm, she had a coat buttoned up right to here and a hat on, as little old ladies do. You know? And she had 2 baskets, 2 bags of shopping, Tesco's shopping. And she saw me over the top. She said, "Hey, love," she said, "I'm really tired." She said, "Can I come in and sit down for a minute?" I said, "Yes, come in, for heaven's sakes, come in." And I went down to our shopping and sat her on the sofa. But one of the privileges of being in the attic was it was so far from the cafe down below, you had your own guest room. I said, "Do you like a cup of tea?" "I could murder a cup of tea," she said. So I made her a pot of tea, and we sat down, and we started talking. And I said to her, "Anyway, what's the lass from Sheffield doing in Cambridge?" She said, "Oh, do you know I'm from Sheffield?" I said, I was a newspaper reporter in Sheffield for 6 years. I said, "I know a Sheffield lass when I see one." Yeah. And we talked about Sheffield. She was from Sheffield. She was Ooty near Sheffield Wednesday's ground. I'm proud to say I hate Sheffield Wednesday. I've never been to their ground. I'm a Sheffield United supporter in Sheffield. But anyway, we talked about this, and some friction about Sheffield Wednesday and Sheffield United. And I said, "Well, what are you doing down in Cambridge? Why?" And she began to tell me a story. She said that she and her husband had decided when he retired to move down to Cambridge to be close to their daughter, who was married to an American Air Force man. Cambridge at that time was surrounded by American air bases. And they'd only just been down in Cambridge a few months, having sold up in Sheffield, and he died. His husband died. But she still had a daughter. And then 6 months later, her daughter's husband had been transferred to Germany. So off they went. And she was left bereft, washed up on an alien shore in Cambridge with no friends. Now no family, and she cried about that. And I said, "Should I come here again?" She said, she said, "I'd love to come again." She said, "Do you come here often?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Are you always here on Wednesdays?" And I said, "As it happens, I am." She said, "I do my shopping on Wednesdays." She said, "Can I come on a Wednesday afternoon? About the same time?" I said, "Yeah, that's fine, that's fine." I said, "I'll tell you, next time you come, will you bring a photograph of your husband and your daughter? Because I kind of got them in my head, but I'd like to see if I'm right, see if I'm right." So she came. And I used to go down to the receptionist and I said, "Look, this little old lady will come every Wednesday. I can guarantee you she will come every Wednesday at 2 o'clock, bang on time, do her shopping. Don't stop her and say, 'Who are you?' And have you signed in?" And because she doesn't know she's a patient. Right? Just let her come. Just let her come. And she did. And we had a lovely time together. She bought photographs, and she brought objects. His pipe, her husband's pipe, and her daughter's puppets and things from her childhood. And the thing she brought most, actually, that she really loved most, was her husband's jacket. Because he was a pipe smoker. His pipe smelt of tobacco. And she hung it in the wardrobe after she got rid of all his other clothes. And she said, when I'm really feeling miserable, I open the wardrobe and I take out his jacket. And I smell his jacket. And she went bright red and she said, hey, sometimes, love, I bring it in bed with me. And I pretend we're making love. Because he was a good love maker. And one day she said to me, do you play crib, love? And I said, no, crib is a northern pub game, north of England pub game, which for some reason I'd never learned to play. And she said, I could teach you. And I said, my husband loved to play crib. So bring your crib board in, and we'll play crib. So for months on end, in our sessions, we played crib, as well as talking about her husband and her daughter and her life. And I began to think, well, she's getting better now. How am I going to tell this lady that I no longer need to see her? When she never really needed to see me in the first place. How do I broach that? But of course, she beat me to it. And she came one day and she said, I ain't going to see you again, love. She said, I've made a decision. I said, oh, what's that? She said, I'm going back to Sheffield. She said, I could have done that in the first place, but it seemed like running away. I had to stay and sort things out in my head, she said. But I've decided now, there's nothing here for me really, apart from you. There's nothing really here, she said. My friends are still, quite a few of them still there in Sheffield. I've put my house on the market and it looks like it's sold. And I bought myself a little terrace house in Ooty Bridge, near where I used to have my last one, she said. And I'm going next week. And we kind of said our goodbyes and so on. And she went to the door, and she got a hand on the door handle. And she turned it, and she was halfway out through the door. And she turned around and she said, hey lad, she said, I'm really glad I never found that psychiatrist. That's fantastic. Yeah. And I went downstairs and I told my consultant, David Clark, which is where he came in. And he fell about laughing on the floor. And when he picked himself up, he said, Mike, he said, that is the biggest compliment anybody will ever pay you, Because he said, what she is saying is it doesn't matter who you are, what discipline you're from, whether you're a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a play therapist or a psychotherapist, whatever ism you belong to, it doesn't matter. What really matters is the human relationship between you and your client. And that, of course, is the whole point of this conference. And it's where I came in, integrating these 4 Ps. I'm going to leave you with one tiny little sequel to this, one tiny little sequel. After you've finished doing workshops and you're no longer practicing, people, of course, ask you to talk about it, especially about bereavement. And I was talking at one massive conference in London, 1,000 and odd people, large group forces. You know, if you're talking about bereavement, loss and bereavement, people get pretty churned up because we've all got those experiences in our own lives. And at the end of that, as usual, I was a kind of little mini clinic of people wanting to talk about things. And at the end of this string of people, I could see this young lady who was really very excited and clearly crying. And it finally got to her turn, and she said, that story you told about a little old lady in Bennett Street, she said, that was my mum. And I thought she meant that could have been my mum. No, she said, it was my mum. I am the daughter who went with my husband to Germany and came back again. She said, we live here now. My mum's dead now, she said, but she settled happily back into Sheffield, and she came over to see us a lot in Germany. And she often talked about you and talked about those sessions she'd had. And she said, she was going to kill herself, you know. And I said, yes, I think she was. She said she'd saved up all those antidepressants that the GP had kindly given to her. And she was going to take them all in one go. And she flushed him down the lavatory after the first time she saw him. And the reason was you didn't panic. You let her talk and share her story. And then she said, you let her play. Isn't that fantastic? And that's what you do all the time. Bless you and your soul. I think if I had to have one wish for the future of my profession, of psychology, of psychotherapy, of play therapy, of all our allied work, it would be that we stop diagnosing people. We stop taking children from sink estates in the upper Welsh valleys, where 1/3 of the children live in material poverty, where we have a greater rate of child abuse and a greater rate of school dropout, a greater rate of locking kids up, and a greater rate of self-harm, and a greater rate of teenage pregnancy than almost anywhere else in Europe. Taking those kids with their behaviours that have caused problems in school, out on the street, in their family, and diagnosing them with some sort of medical issue like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or depression, and giving them a pill as if that was the way out of their problems. Or, if they don't cooperate, rejecting them as having some sort of socio-economic condition that isn't part of my remit. All children in trauma are part of my remit, and my job is not to give them a pill, but actually to help them express what's happening in that trauma. They don't need to be blanketed and cosseted and pushed down. They need some sort of opportunity to express their feelings, however violent and miserable and angry they may be, to get them out and onto the surface where we can work with them. And my hope for the future would be that we'd start with that aim in mind, and that we would reach for play therapy and not a prescription pad.